I used to close my eyes and wish myself away. When the nights became too loud, when the walls trembled from the weight of his fists and my mother's cries, I would press my hands over my ears and imagine I was somewhere else. Somewhere quiet, where the air did not smell like stale whiskey and rage. I was 7 the first time I saw him hit her. Not a slap, not a push, though those had come before, but a closed fist punch that sent her crumbling to the kitchen floor. I remember the sound of it, a sickening crack, followed by a silence that terrified me more than the screams. My mother had looked at me with eyes that pleaded for something I was too small to understand. That night, I learned what fear was. For years, I lived in that fear. My father was a storm, unpredictable and relentless. He could be fine one minute, laughing, telling stories about his childhood, ruffling my hair. Then, in a flash, he would turn dark. My mother bore the brunt of it. She learned to move quietly, to avoid setting him off. But it was never enough. There was always something. A misplaced glass, a dinner that was too cold, a look on her face he didn't like. And I watched it all. I learned how to read the warning signs, the way his jaw tightened when he was about to explode, the way my mother shrank into herself, folding like paper, as if she could will herself invisible. I learned that love, at least in our house, came with bruises and apologies that meant nothing. The worst part was how the world outside our home saw him. To them, he was charming, a hard worker, a man who brought home a paycheck and took care of his family. No one saw the monster that lurked beneath the surface. No one heard my mother sobbing behind the bathroom door, whispering to me that everything would be okay, even when I knew she didn't believe it herself. When I was 16, I finally found my voice. He had been drinking more than usual that night. My mother had tried to stop him, tried to pull the bottle away, and he lashed out. It was worse than I had ever seen. She hit the wall, slumping down with a sound that hollowed me out from the inside. Something snapped in me then. I stood between them for the first time. I don't remember exactly what I said. I just remember the look in his eyes when I screamed at him to stop. The surprise, as if he had forgotten I was even there, that I had always been there, absorbing every moment, every broken word, every shattered plate. And for the first time, he hesitated. The next morning, I took my mother's hand and we left. We had no money, no plan, just the weight of all the years we had survived pressing against our backs. But I knew one thing. I would rather sleep on the streets than spend another night in that house. We found a shelter. It wasn't perfect, but it was safe. My mother was fragile, like a bird with broken wings, but she was still breathing, still fighting. And so was I. Healing wasn't easy. The nightmares didn't stop just because we left. I carried the ghosts of my childhood into every relationship, every quiet room that felt too much like home. But I learned. I went to therapy. I found people who understood, who had lived through the same darkness and come out the other side. Now, years later, I am not just a survivor. I am a woman who has reclaimed her life. I speak for the girl who used to close her eyes and wish herself away, and I remind her every day that she made it, because I did.